Republicans, Democrats, they all believe that Trump is a kind of monster who feeds on attention. And the more attention you give the monster, the more powerful the monster becomes. And this is not a crazy theory, okay? There is some truth to it. In fact, it's definitely what happened in the 2015 and 2016 Republican primary. There is no question. The coverage of Trump, obsessive and constant, his name recognition going in really did help elevate him in that race. But it's not 2016 anymore. Right now, Trump is the subject of attention because he's the first ever ex-president to be indicted, because he's currently facing down the possibility of 2 other indictments. That's not a great reason to get attention. That's negative attention, whether Trump likes it or not. And since 2016, there is pretty good evidence that has accrued, maybe counterintuitively, but robust, that the more attention voters pay to Donald Trump, the less they like him. In fact, even in 2016, voters didn't really like him very much. He lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton by about 3 million votes. He narrowly won a fluky electoral college victory with the help of 2 different criminal conspiracies, one from Russia, which illegally interfered in the election on behalf of Trump, one from Michael Cohen and David Pecker to pay hush money to Storm Daniels, which is now the subject of Trump's indictment. And people forget this. But I was there, and I'm telling you, this is how it went down. The thing that really hurt Hillary Clinton in that election was the fact that she was the object of attention, certainly down the stretch. It was the Clinton campaign. Everyone was obsessively focused on her emails, the Comey letter, Huma Abedin's laptop. In the ensuing years, since 2016, since that rupture in the space-time continuum, it has become clear when the general voting public, median, persuadable, normie voters, pay attention to Donald Trump, they don't like him. They don't like what they see. This has been demonstrated over and over again in election after election. It was true in 2018 when the election became a midterm referendum on his presidency and Republicans lost 40 seats in the House. It was true in 2020 when Trump became the first incumbent president to lose re-election since George H.W. Bush in 1992, losing the popular vote by 7 million and underperforming other Republicans up and down the ballot who had actually a pretty good night. It was certainly true in the most recent 2022 midterms when, against all odds, the Democrats had a surprisingly good night. That is in large part because Donald Trump had his fingerprints all over that election, endorsing a bunch of unlikable MAGA weirdos, or as Mitch McConnell euphemistically called it, quote, candidate quality.
Our ability to control the primary outcome was quite limited in 22 because of the support of the former president proved to be very decisive in these primaries. So my view was, do the best you can with the cards you're dealt. Hopefully in the next cycle, we'll have quality candidates everywhere and a better outcome.
I know the point that I'm making here is kind of banal, and maybe to some it's obvious, but it's the core truth, and it's this. Everywhere you look, the signs point to the fact that Donald Trump is incredibly unpopular with persuadable voters outside the Republican base. But everyone is so freaked out, so permanently scarred by 2016, that obvious truth is often obscured. And the truth is that Donald Trump, listen to me now, does not possess a magic power that turns political gravity upside down. He is an unlikable figure who lots of persuadable voters find repulsive. Now, he is very, very good. I mean, incredible, really, a generational talent at demanding and receiving lots of attention. But here's the thing. Right now, that is the worst possible thing for the Republican Party because he cannot be ignored. He refuses to be ignored. He will do anything not to be ignored. There is a reason why the smart people in the Republican Party, like Mitch McConnell, who you can't deny has very strong political instincts, doesn't want to talk about Trump, doesn't give quotes on Trump directly. There's a reason they deflect or go off the record when asked about his latest scandal du jour, because they understand this. The more you talk about Donald Trump, the worse it is for the Republican Party. But here's the thing. They're stuck with the guy, aren't they? The guy is still the clear and decisive frontrunner in the Republican primary for 2024, even though he got arraigned in federal court yesterday. Then he went back to Florida to deliver this just unhinged, nasty, threatening, utterly boring, listless, low-energy speech that did nothing to earn him a single new vote from anyone outside his diehard base of supporters. the Republican Party has still yoked themselves to him hopelessly to the point where even his challengers for the 2024 nomination are one-upping each other to associate themselves with that spectacle. Mike Pence, who Trump reportedly thought deserved chance of hang Mike Pence from an armed mob, still defends him to this day. Ron DeSantis, who Trump smeared as a groomer, implying he acted inappropriately with young women or girls, still issued a ridiculous statement against Trump's indictment, vowing to fight his extradition. At some point, Republicans are going to have to face this reality. The guy's utterly toxic. As long as you keep supporting him, you're going to lose a lot of winnable elections. And again, we keep seeing the proof. Last night, while most of the country was focused on Trump's arraignment, there were two very telling elections. Now, the first was the mayoral race in Chicago, which, yes, is, of course, a dyed-in-the-wool Democratic town. But it's a Democratic town that also had Richie Daley as mayor for 20 years, elected Rahm Emanuel twice. It is more than capable of electing what you might call conservative Democrats. And the conservative Democrat in this race, a guy named Paul Vallas, was running on a tough-on-crime platform. And in certain ways, he had the wind at his back, frankly. I mean, first of all, he had a lot of money, he outspent his opponent 2-1. And also, violence, gun violence particularly, is a very real problem in Chicago. People are pretty freaked out by it. It's upsetting. The city faces lots of challenges. Yet Vallas lost the race to progressive challenger Brandon Johnson for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which is because Johnson successfully painted Vallas as a secret Republican, tied him to Trump at every turn, pointing to comments like this that Vallas made about Trump's second impeachment after January 6th, when he filled in as a co-host on a right-wing talk show.
He should have been censured. He should not have been impeached. And we knew that this was going to happen, yet they went along with the trial anyway.
Right. Also, for those wanting to put Republicans on the spot, if he would have been censured, it would have put much more pressure on them. And you know, I always felt that it was a witch hunt.
A witch hunt. What are you doing there, Paul? It's not a good look, buddy. Yes, Vallas is a conservative Democrat. He's not a Republican. The election result once again highlights the conundrum for conservatives broadly and the Republican Party. I mean, look, if you're the conservative in the race, right, you're running in the right lane in a race, running on law and order campaign, right, crackdown on crime, against sky-high inflation. Those should be slam dunk issues for right-wingers. This political terrain should be the best terrain for them. They're the political conditions that generally lead to pretty significant electoral victories in the past for conservatives, except their brand has been so thoroughly poisoned by Trump and Trumpism. But here's the thing, and here's why it's even worse for them. It's deeper than just the taint of Trump. They've also got an agenda that is not popular. And they keep doing it over and over. They're pushed to ban abortions, for instance. Along with Trump, abortion was the top issue that drove Democrats to overperform in the 2022 midterms. It is still absolutely driving voters to the polls today. You see, the other big election last night was in Wisconsin, where a crucial race for a state Supreme Court was effectively a referendum on abortion. Abortion is currently illegal in Wisconsin. Conservatives controlled that Supreme Court. If liberals flipped control with this one seat, they could lift the state's abortion ban. Those were the stakes, and voters showed up. There was a massive turnout, and the liberal candidate, a woman named Janet Protasiewicz, won decisively. Get this, it is looking like she won by about 10 points. That is a pretty dramatic victory for what is effectively a 50-50 state. And even in the ancestral Republican enclave of the Milwaukee suburbs, the party of Trump keeps losing ground. Take Ozaukee County, for example, one of the three conservative counties crucial for Republicans to be competitive in Wisconsin. Last night, Republicans barely eked out a victory in that county, about 5 points. Get this, in 2012, Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney won Ozaukee by 30 points. In 2014, incumbent Republican Governor Scott Walker won it by 40. It now seems completely plausible it could flip blue in a matter of years. None other than Ann Coulter, who, of course, is recklessly offensive and cruel, hit the nail on the head. Seriously, listen to this. When she tweeted, quote, "The demand for anti-abortion legislation just cost Republicans another crucial race. Pro-lifers, we won. Abortion's not a constitutional right anymore. Please stop pushing strict limits on abortion or there will be no Republicans left." She's right. That's the problem. The base believes it. They didn't want to just get rid of Roe v. Wade. They want to outlaw abortion everywhere. They demand nothing less than full abortion criminalization everywhere. Look at Florida. Again, all eyes on Trump, the arraignment, right? We got Wisconsin, we got Chicago. Meanwhile, look at Florida. Ron DeSantis is about to do one of the most politically disastrous things he could possibly do. He is going to sign a law that effectively bans abortion in Florida. He has no choice. The primary voters in the Republican Party demand it. It's going to be a massive anvil around his neck if and when he runs for president, if he gets the nomination. But he's going to do it because that's what the MAGA base wants, even though what they want is increasingly out of touch with the median voter. That is once again the fundamental conundrum. Republicans have locked themselves in this MAGA universe that voters, general election voters, persuadable voters, keep recoiling from. Not just on abortion. I mean, the House Republican caucus took over the House, and they're holding multiple hearings about Twitter, for the love of God. Republican state legislators, state after state, governors are waging an all-out assault on trans teenagers, including a Kansas bill Republicans there passed today that critics say could expose children to genital inspections. This stuff, listen to me, is not winning politics. They keep doing it. They keep going further, and they keep having a harder time persuading anyone who doesn't already agree with them. Which leads them to their final recourse, which is to just withdraw from or subvert democratic processes altogether.